Wraith by William Toney. Chapter 10. Whispers of Fear. Rocco burst out from the back door of the pool hall, his chest heaving and his face drenched in sweat. He didn't stop running until he was several blocks away, collapsing in the shadow of a graffiti-covered building. His hands shook as he fumbled for his phone. "What the hell just happened?" he muttered to himself, dialing Marcus's number. The line rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "What is it, Rocco? This better be good." "It's bad, boss," Rocco stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Real bad. One of the guys we shook down, the one we thought died, he's not dead, or at least I think he's alive." Marcus sighed impatiently. "Spit it out. What are you talking about?" "There was a guy at the pool hall. He knew things about us, Marcus, about what we've done. And he wasn't normal. He made the lights explode, the walls shake. It was like a damn horror movie." "Are you drunk?" Marcus growled. "Or high?" "I'm serious," Rocco yelled, his voice breaking. "This guy, he's after us. He said he's coming for you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Marcus said, "Get back here, now, and don't say another word to anyone until you do." Rocco hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting Aaron to appear out of the shadows. I can't. He's out there, Marcus, watching." "Pull yourself together, Rocco," Marcus snapped. "You sound pathetic. Get back here before I come find you myself." The line went dead. Meanwhile, Aaron watched from a rooftop, his expression cold and calculating. He had followed Rocco at a distance, ensuring the man felt the weight of his unseen presence. Every stumble, every frantic glance over his shoulder, fueled Aaron's resolve. "He's going to Marcus," Aaron said aloud, though his voice was meant for Allistor, who hovered beside him. "Of course he is," Allistor replied, his golden eyes glinting in the moonlight. "Fear always drives the weak to seek protection, but Marcus's confidence is a fragile thing. Let's see how long it lasts." Aaron nodded, his gaze fixed on the cityscape. "One by one they'll fall, and when Marcus is all that's left, he'll know there's nowhere to hide." Rocco didn't make it back to Marcus's hideout until the early hours of the morning. The building, a rundown warehouse on the edge of the industrial district, was guarded by two men who looked just as tired and jittery as Rocco felt. "Man, you look like you picked a fight and lost. What happened to you?" one of them asked as Rocco stumbled past. "Shut up," Rocco muttered, brushing them off. He didn't stop until he was inside, slamming the heavy door behind him. Marcus was waiting in the main room, seated at a table piled with cash, weapons, and half-empty bottles of liquor. His lieutenants surrounded him, their faces grim. Rocco froze under Marcus's cold stare. "Well," Marcus said, gesturing for him to speak. "There's a guy," Rocco began, his voice shaky. "He's after us. After you. He's not normal, Marcus. He can do things. Crazy things." Not one of the lieutenants, a burly man named Deacon, snorted. "You sound like a scared kid telling ghost stories." "Shut up," Rocco snapped, glaring at him. "You weren't there. You didn't see what he did." Marcus raised a hand, silencing the room. "Rocco," he said evenly, "start from the beginning. Tell me everything." Rocco took a deep breath and recounted the night's events. The flickering lights, the shattered glass, the jukebox blaring on its own, and how the pool balls destroyed everything, including himself. He described Aaron's shadowy figure, his chilling voice, and the sheer terror that had gripped the gang before they scattered. When he finished, the room was silent. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "So, some guy spooked you. Big deal. You think I haven't dealt with wannabe tough guys before?" "This wasn't just some guy," Rocco insisted. "He's something else. He knows about us, Marcus. About the couple we left for dead." Marcus's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Watch your mouth." Rocco clamped his mouth shut, but the damage was done. The tension in the room thickened as Marcus's lieutenants exchanged uneasy glances. Deacon finally broke the silence. "Boss, maybe we should take this seriously. If this guy's messing with us, it could be bad for business." "Bad for business," Marcus repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What's bad for business is letting some freak scare us into hiding." But nothing," Marcus roared, slamming his fist on the table. "We're not running from some boogeyman. If he wants to play games, fine. We'll find him, and we'll put an end to it. Rocco opened his mouth to protest, but thought better of it. He slumped into a chair, defeated. Marcus turned to the others. Spread the word. I want this guy found. 10 grand to whoever finds this guy and brings him to me. The men nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and fear. Aaron, perched on another rooftop, listened to the conversation through the cracked skylight. His abilities allowed him to amplify the sound, every word reaching his ears clearly. They're rallying, Allistor said, amused. How predictable. Aaron's expression was stoic, but his hands clenched into fists. Let them come. It just saves me the trouble of finding them. Careful, Allistor warned, though his tone was far from genuine concern. Arrogance can be a double-edged sword. This isn't arrogance, Aaron replied, his voice low. It's certainty. He turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving the warehouse behind. The time for waiting was over. Marcus's gang would hunt him, but they didn't realize they were the ones being hunted. Later that night, Aaron targeted another member of the gang. This one, a wiry man named Eddie, was walking home alone, oblivious to the danger stalking him. Aaron followed from a distance, manipulating the streetlights to flicker and die as Eddie passed beneath them. Who's there? He called, his voice cracking. No answer, just the distant squeak of a rusted bicycle wheel. He took a deep breath and forced his feet to move, one step at a time, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. A sharp sound made him whip his head around. A glass bottle rolled lazily across the street toward him, stopping at his feet. Eddie stared at it, his pulse hammering in his ears. He nudged it away with his boot, but as soon as it moved, another bottle clinked its way into the street. Then another. Then another. The bottles formed a circle around him, their hollow interiors catching the glow of the nearby street lamp. Eddie turned frantically, his breath shallow. What the hell is this? He whispered. From the shadows a voice emerged, cold and calm. A lesson, Eddie. Aaron stepped into the light, his face shadowed, but his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. Eddie reached for the knife at his hip, but before he could draw it, the bottles around him began to rise. One by one they floated into the air, their jagged edges glinting like teeth. What the? Eddie's words were cut off as the first bottle shot forward, narrowly missing his head and shattering against the wall behind him. Another bottle spun in the air, hurtling toward his legs. Eddie stumbled backward, falling to the ground with a yelp. You think you can hurt people and walk away untouched? Aaron's voice echoed, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. This is justice, Eddie. My kind of justice. A trash can lid launched itself from the sidewalk, spinning like a saw blade. Eddie barely rolled out of the way in time as it crashed into the pavement, sparks flying. He scrambled to his feet, darting toward a parked car. But the car's headlights flared to life, blinding him. The wipers began to move, scraping dryly against the windshield, and the car horn blared a deafening sound. Eddie covered his ears, shouting, Stop! Stop it, you freak! Aaron's laughter echoed through the street, low and menacing. Not until you understand. A manhole cover slid across the pavement, tripping Eddie and sending him sprawling. Before he could get up, the streetlight above flickered and exploded, plunging the alley into near darkness. Only the faint glow of the rising bottles illuminated the scene, their sharp edges casting eerie reflections. Aaron stepped closer, his shadow looming over the cowering thug. What did you think would happen, Eddie? That you could just hide in the shadows while your gang hurt innocent people? Were you there that night? The couple in the alley? Ring any bells? Eddie tried to crawl backward, but the ground beneath him shifted. The cracks in the pavement seemed to writhe and stretch, grabbing at his hands and knees. I didn't. It wasn't me, I swear. Eddie's voice cracked as tears streaked his face. I was just following orders. Aaron knelt, his face inches from Eddie's, his voice dropping to a whisper. You're all the same, cowards hiding behind excuses. But there's no hiding from me. With a flick of his wrist, Aaron sent a swarm of shattered glass shards swirling around Eddie. Like a small tornado of glass, the whirlwind began to shred his clothes and then his skin. Eddie screamed, his body trembling uncontrollably. I'm going to leave you like you left me, Aaron said, his voice cold as ice. If you manage to survive, don't let me lay eyes on you again, or you won't survive next time. The shards dropped to the ground with a deafening clatter. The street fell silent again as Aaron stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as though he were never there. Eddie was left alone, curled on the ground, his sobs the only sound in the empty street.